Hello and welcome to Morning Brew on Politics Social. I am Graham Hughes and it is Wednesday the 16th of April 2025. Hope you're all right. This morning in the chat we have Benjamin, we have Sarah, we've got Martin Harrow, we've got Scott, we've got Kate, we have Pete's Music, we have Veg Pie, hi Veg Pie, we've got Audrey White, we've got Liebchen in there and Saz, we've got Vegan Elite acting as a moderator. Thank you so much for everyone for joining us this morning. If you'd like to join our friends, we are all friends here in the chat, please just hit that subscribe button and you can join our community and you can join the socialites in the chat. No bigots today, please. No trolls, no TERFs, no transphobes, any of that shit, right? Yeah, if I see your message, you'll get muted. Well, if Reagan sees it, you might get muted. If I see it, you're likely to get banned off the channel completely. So, yes, Alistair is there. Hi, all in chat. Hi, Graham. Hi, Badgers. Hello, everyone. So today we're going to be talking about trans rights. Trans rights are human rights. And there is going to be a Supreme Court decision handed down at 9:45 today. So while we're on air, and it's going to be essentially saying the legal definition of a woman. So this episode is going to be a full-throated defense of trans lives and a furious denunciation of anti-trans bigotry that has infected the political sphere, legal issues and cultural discourse in the United Kingdom over the last 10 years. Well, the UK, the US and beyond. From the UK Supreme Court having to define some kind of legal definition, a legal definition of woman, and the transphobic moral panic whipped up by pundits, politicians, and rowling acolytes. So let's set the record straight here. Trans people are not a threat. They're not a threat to our way of life. They're not criminally more likely. They're not more likely to commit crimes than any other group in society. And they're under threat. They are under real threat. And it's this transphobia is... No, it's not directly affecting me because I'm a cisgender, white, middle-class, middle-aged man. But it's affecting my friends really badly. It's horrible to watch my friends being bullied and everyone just remaining silent. Even those of us in the, who make YouTube videos and have much, much bigger audiences than what we do here on Politics Social. It's almost silent. You have a few fantastic allies who are standing up and making their voices heard. But unfortunately, it seems to be a topic that many big mouths on the left who should really be tackling this, who should really be talking about it and giving trans people, the support that they deserve, are being completely silent. And yes, James O'Brien, I'm looking at you. But there are others as well who you would think would stand up and say, no, this is wrong. This is wrong. We can't keep going on like this. We can't keep demonizing a minority of a minority for the edification of a few fascists. Because make no mistake, the wall between fascism and transphobia and fascism, it's not a wall, it's a piece of paper. It's a piece of wet paper. It's very easy to punch through from one side to the other. So today we're going to be talking about solidarity with our trans allies and the trans community. And we are going to be talking about, how we got here, what we're facing at the moment, the lived reality of trans people. And if you are trans or you're a trans ally in the chat, please let me know. Let us know. I know you can't write very much. You can't write essays in there, but please let's just talk about it. I'm afraid it's going to have to be a slightly shorter show today, so I'll be finishing 10 minutes earlier than normal, and the reason for that is I'm in a hotel, guest house, and I've got to basically pack up all my stuff and be out of here for 10 o'clock, and that means packing up my camera and my lights, and my microphone, and my computer, and all this spaghetti network of cables that are all over the floor. So I need to get all tidied up in 10 minutes. So it will be a slightly shorter show today. My mum's watching. Hi, Mum. Hello. We've also got Gallifreyan Ren. Can confirm my only danger is to myself. My only crime is against fashion. My evil trans agenda is deciding on something delicious and healthy to eat. Behold the threat I pose. Yeah, Gallifreyan Ren. You're absolutely right. It is. It's so ridiculous if these people who are transphobic, I shudder to call them TERFs. I don't like the expression TERFs because it's got feminism at the end of it, or feminist, and they're not feminists. They're as far from feminists as it is, as it's possible to be. They're trans exclusionary radical bigots. They're TERBs. That's what they are. Let's just call them transphobes. This Supreme Court ruling is part of a larger culture war, the war on trans people, that's been raging now for about a decade. It doesn't really go back much further than that. Of course, we've always had bigots. We've always had homophobic bigots. And it seemed that in the same way that if you're talking about gay rights, you were automatically talking about lesbian rights, you're talking about bisexual rights. It seemed logical that you were also talking about trans rights as well. And so when the gay community were achieving these amazing breakthroughs in acceptance and also their legal standing, it was just expected, I think, that trans people would come with them. But now there's a group within the LGBT community that wants to cleave the T off from the LGB. People who are gay, people who are lesbians, saying no, we don't want to be included. That they're a separate group to us, which is disgusting, which is disgraceful, which is a betrayal of everything that I believe the LGBT community should stand for. It stands for solidarity, for the same reason that gays and lesbians protested with the miners during the miners' strike in the 1980s, because they saw it as part of solidarity. They saw the intersectionality that was going on there. And we've talked about this many times on this channel, and I'll probably come back to it a few times in what I'm going to say today. Transphobia is a gateway drug to bigotry, but it's also a Trojan horse to get through policies that don't just disenfranchise trans people, but disenfranchise gay people, lesbians, bisexual people. And then you can move on to other minorities. You can move on to religious minorities, ethnic minorities. You can move on to women. We're seeing the SAVE Act go through the American government at the moment, going through Congress. And the SAVE Act is going to make it so that if you're trans, you can't vote. That's it. Your name on your ID has to match your name on your birth certificate. And if it doesn't, it has to be a passport. 60 million people in America, women in America, don't have a passport, and their name has changed. Because this doesn't just affect trans people who have changed their name because they're trans. It also affects people who are cisgender women who have got married. So you disenfranchise a tiny, tiny group, a minority of a minority. You disenfranchise trans people. And in doing so, you disenfranchise millions of women voters. And they say, it's okay, just take your husband along to the polling booth with you. Katrina Tam, thank you so much for the £5 super chat. That is very kind of you. New definition of TERF, trans exclusionary reactionary fascists. I like it. I like it, Katrina. I'm going to start using that. Thank you very much for the super chat. I'm going to start using that. Trans exclusionary reactionary fascists. Trans people were amongst the first targeted by the Nazis too. Yeah, something that was denied by the queen of all TERFs, which is J.K. Rowling. We're going to be talking about today's ruling. We're going to be talking about the implications, how transphobia is being used politically, and why we must fight back. Before we get started, I just want to read something that I've been sent by a trans friend of mine. about the ruling today and about how it's going to affect things. It's going to take a minute to load up. So I'll just talk about the Supreme Court ruling first of all. So what happened here was the court ruled against the Scottish government. But what's likely to happen anyway? The debate is centering around whether legal sex via a gender recognition certificate or birth sex determines access to sex-based rights. So this idea is they want to exclude trans women from spaces that are for women. The most clear, objective of these TERFs is to force trans women to use the men's bathrooms. I mean, hey, you get to skip a queue, I guess, because of architectural sexism, ensuring that women have to queue to use the bog, but men don't. But that puts, in the reality of the situation, is that it puts trans women in unnecessary danger of them going into a toilet with men who might attack them for being trans. So what do? Well, I know trans people who just don't go to the toilet, and when they're out and about, they just don't use the toilet. And this particular mentality that they've got, at the moment, is just so cruel. It's so unfair. It's so unreasonable. But so this is what my trans friend sent this morning. Either way, we lose. If they win, this is talking about the decision at 9:45 today. Either way, we lose. If they win, they win, and the Equality Act will probably change to define sex, if that is even possible. If we win, the EHRC will say, well, okay, we need to change the Equality Act, but also make the 7,000 people with gender recognition certificates, show them to enter sex spaces. And obviously most trans people don't have a gender recognition certificate. So everyone who's trans is going to be affected by this. And one of the other knock-on things that often gets ignored in the popular discourse is trans men. There are more trans men than trans women. And they're expected to use the women's toilets, looking like some of the trans masks that I've seen, who are like bodybuilders with a beard, who I wouldn't pick a fight with them. Let's put it that way. And they want these very burly looking men, because they are men, trans men are men, to use the women's toilets. I don't think they've thought this through. But also this idea that you've got to show your GRC in order to use the bathroom, that fucks things up for a lot of these TERFs who don't look traditionally feminine. Do you know what I mean? Like, don't want to say they're all minging, but some of them are better looking than others, I guess. But I don't judge. I'm like, anyone can use the toilet. If that's the toilet you want to use that toilet. I can understand, like, if a man goes into the women's toilet, that's out of bounds, yeah? Don't do it. But if someone who is going to go and commit a horrific crime is going to be put off by a sign on a toilet, it's for the birds. The arguments like that they make are so nebulous and ridiculous. They talk about crisis places, where people go if they've been sexually assaulted. And I've got a friend who is transmasc who worked in a shelter for women, and they allowed trans women to go into the shelter as well, who had suffered from domestic violence. And it's not like you're all in a big dorm room. It's not. Do you know what I mean? You get your own bedrooms. The social spaces where people go, like, that's not where you talk through your trauma usually. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's just a weird way of looking at it. It's someone who obviously hasn't had to go to one of these places or use one of these places saying, oh, well, this is how I think they work, when the reality is they're not like that. If you're going to be talking through your trauma normally to get started before you go into group sessions, it's a one-on-one. Anyway, so in this particular case, trans women were not, or trans people, in fact, were not allowed to be heard in this case. Julian Marnes called it the most depressing day of his legal career. The Supreme Court accepted multiple interventions from anti-trans groups, but denied the community, the trans community, a voice. The judgment's practical effects might be limited, but the symbolic damage is profound, and there's deep concern that Parliament under Labour may now feel emboldened to rewrite the law to further restrict trans rights. And this ruling is part of a long-term attempt to strip back legal protections under this guise of clarity, which is nonsense because it's not binary, right? Nothing in life is binary. It's all a spectrum. People who aren't disabled enough, because they can hear a little bit or they can see a little bit. People who aren't autistic enough. People who aren't ADHD enough. Where do you qualify? Where do you draw the line? It's not on or off. It's a spectrum. Gay people, it's a spectrum. Mental health, it's a spectrum. And we as humans, we're analog. We're not, you just don't switch between one thing or another. You gradually evolve in so many ways. I mean, physically, but also in the way that your brain works and the way that you integrate with yourself with society. It's all an evolution. It's not good versus evil. It's not as straightforward as that. It's not binary. I know that we want to go back to some binary thing because that makes it really easy. But you think about people in your life who are pigeonholers. They just want to put you in a pigeonhole. And if you don't fit neatly into a pigeonhole, it fucks them off. Like I've had people get angry with me. Right, this is a weird one, but I've had people get angry with me because I don't take drugs and I don't smoke and I never have and I never will. And angry is kind of like the wrong word. Let's say exasperated because of my personality, because I'm gregarious and I love partying and I've been to hundreds of festivals and thousands of gigs. I like going out, I like socialising, I like seeing me mates, I like having, a few drinks, having a dance. Yes, I know alcohol's a drug. It's a legal drug. But the fact that I'm not the person that they think I am, like, it baffles them because they can't put me in a pigeonhole. They can't say, oh yeah, Graham, party animal, he'll be dead from drugs by the age of 39. They can't do that for me because that's not me. And that annoys them. And fine, don't pigeonhole people because people are a lot more complex than that. And it's not straightforward. And some people might surprise you in life time and time again. You will be surprised if you walk into a room and you think, by looking at someone, you are going to behave in a particular way. You are going to sound like this. You are going to hold these particular opinions. People surprise you every day because it's not as simple as that. So, clarity. It signals that trans people are not considered worthy of being consulted on their own rights. This case, and whatever comes of it, in about 20 minutes' time, whatever comes of it, like the fact that trans people were excluded from this case entirely is just so sickening. The law has become a tool of exclusion rather than protection. And that's wrong. The law should always be about protection. Gallifreyan, sorry, I need to correct. Gender reassignment is already a protected characteristic. What's the goal here, says Gender Grimfang. It's just to make people's lives more difficult. That's it. That's the goal. Make people's lives more difficult. Kate Smith, we have managed for years, decades, etc. without caring about toilets. Yeah, exactly. This is a completely invented culture war by the people who want us all fighting amongst ourselves while they strip us of our rights. We've had, in the last 10 years, British people have had huge numbers of rights taken from them. Everyone has. And they'll continue doing that. They'll continue taking away your rights because if we let them. And this is the thing. This is why we need to cisgender people like me need to stand up for our trans brothers and sisters, because seriously, it affects us all. It affects us all. As John Donne wrote, no man is an island. So this manufactured gender panic, politicians weaponizing identity, trans rights are at the bottom of voters' concerns, but they seem to be on the top of politicians' agendas. Media and politicians continue to ask this bullshit gotcha question. What is a woman? What is a woman? Can you define a woman? Instead of fixing crumbling infrastructure, NHS backlogs, or, economic inequality. J.K. Rowling's toxic influence has poisoned Labour policy and emboldened transphobic rhetoric. Her behaviour from, the accidental likes. She accidentally liked a transphobic tweet about, this is years ago now, and she apologised for it. She said, I'd march, I'll arm in arm with my trans brothers and sisters. She said, a fucking liar. Fucking look at her now. She is targeting athletes, mocking trans kids, mocking asexual people, and now defending fascist ideology and thanking Donald Trump. She sided with Voldemort, with fat orange Voldemort, with this gender critical window dressing. They're not gender critical, they're just fascists, they're just bigots. The F in TERF, yes, stands for fascist from now on. And trans people have been used as political pawns. Trans kids as well, especially, and adults used as scapegoats. In the same way that gay people were treated in the 1980s. Real issues like healthcare waiting lists, housing, job insecurity are all ignored, especially amongst the trans community, who are more likely to be unemployed, poor and marginalised. Trans people are more likely to be severed from their families, they're more likely to face prejudice in everyday life, just going about their life, and that prejudice has been empowered by the likes of Rowling. For some, it's a crime for which I don't think she will ever be forgiven. I don't know how she takes it back now, what she's done to her legacy. She won't be remembered as this author that brought joy to the lives of millions of children around the world. She'll be remembered as a TERF. It will be spray painted on her tombstone. Like, people won't go to put flowers down, they'll go to piss on her grave now. That's what she's done. When she goes, people are going to celebrate, and her kids are going to have to see that. I said this before, 15 years ago, if she had carked it, she would have got a state funeral, mate. They would have been throwing flowers in front of the hearse, just like Princess Diana. It would have been this national outpouring of grief. Now, who's going to give a shit? Now, all you're going to see is a few TERFs crying, because they've lost Queen TERF, the woman with enough power and money and influence to ensure an agenda that not just takes rights away from trans people, but takes rights away from us all. And she cackles and laughs about it because, as with all rich people, it doesn't affect them. Doesn't affect her. She'll still be allowed to vote. She has servants probably carry around a golden toilet and a sedan chair on sticks, that she can go and shit in when she needs to. She doesn't care. She doesn't have to use a public toilet in a National Express coach station. It doesn't even occur to her. Why would it? And then we've got the fact that the press have been completely complicit in this. The BBC, Times, Telegraph and others uncritically platform anti-trans experts. Trans voices are marginalised, misrepresented, or ignored altogether. The Good Law Project was blocked from intervening in this court case despite representing trans people's interests directly. And this is where we are, Hang on, does this mean that fathers and old brothers will be banned from going into the ladies' toilets with their young daughters or sisters? Well, yeah, as a stepdad of two young daughters, this was something that we always had an issue with because of J.K. Rowling. So what am I supposed to do with my stepdaughter, who already suffers from anxiety? She doesn't want to go in the toilet on her own, and I can't go into the ladies with her. And I don't want to take her into the men's toilets because she's got anxiety. Why is J.K. Rowling making my stepdaughter's life more difficult than it needs to be? If I'm out with her, why is she doing this? because she doesn't think about the knock-on effects and how it affects other people when, you know, little girl badly needs to go to the toilet, but can't unless we can find a disabled toilet to go into that's non-gendered. I mean, that sort of stuff for me is the meat and bones of all this, because, like I'll keep saying, it's not just trans people. And this is what I think that we need to get through, because I can sit here and tell you all the shitty things that have been done to trans people over the last few years. And most of you watching this, you know. Many of you watching this will have lived it. We also need to look at how that affects other people when we talk to other people, when we talk to cisgender people who might be getting a bit turfy, might be, you know, thinking, oh yeah, those trans people, they do make my life more difficult somehow. We need to make sure that they understand that trans rights are human rights, but that it's got more than one meaning. Because if you take away trans rights, you take away human rights as well. And the knock-on effects of ripping up the disabled ramps, because disabled people, statistically, I read in a bullshit survey that I just made up on the internet, are more likely to attack people somehow. Did you hear that? Oh no, I just made it up, but we can all refer to this survey that I've done now for, you know, the rest of time to say, oh yeah, they're spoiling things for everyone else. Rip up the disabled ramps. The knock-on effects of that, well, it's going to screw up anyone who's got a pushchair. You know, who's trying to drag some luggage up a steep staircase. Let's get rid of the disabled ramps. Why would you? Why would you do that to disabled people? Unless you're a sadist, unless you're a fascist, unless you're a scumbag, piece of shit human being. Trans issues weren't an issue until 2016, says Chris C. Looking back, in 2016, 2 CS abusers in prison changed their genders and got married inside. I think that's what kicked it off with the press. I mean, I don't want to blame... I don't want to necessarily put the blame on one particular issue. I think that this is something that the right pounced on because they knew that they could get otherwise progressive people on board. And there are many people in Labour who are Labour members who are massive TERFs, because they think that that's the acceptable face of bigotry. Started in 1988 with Section 28, and the UK hasn't moved since then. It's sickening. Well, the Section 28 was repealed finally in about 2003. But yeah, I went to school under Section 28. We weren't allowed to talk about being gay in school. Veg Pie, thank you very much for the £5 super chat. That's really kind of you. I asked my trans man friend what toilet they use. They replied, oh, the ladies, the men's are disgusting. Do you know what, though? I used to clean toilets for a living. When I was working at the Fab Cafe in Manchester, I also worked as a cleaner. And in my experience, it was easier to clean the men's than the ladies. Although, there is a rung of hell set aside for people, men, who threw their cigarette butts in the urinal. When you are allowed to smoke in pubs, which is when I was working in pubs, my lungs probably still haven't recovered. People would smoke and they'd throw the cigarette butt in the urinal. Where do you think it goes? It can't go down into the drains because it gets stopped by the little grate. Someone has to put a pair of gloves on, right, and pick them out and put them in the bin. Out of the piss, out of the pissy water. Thanks for that, smokers. Divinity Journey. It's never ceased to amaze me how the Queen of TERFs can't see that our obsession with other people's sex lives / gender is actually really weird and creepy. It is weird and creepy. The obsession that J.K. Rowling in particular has, and the fact that it's bleeding over now into accusing black women of not looking feminine enough, and saying that asexual people, there's something wrong with them when there isn't. You know, it's fine to be asexual. It's another point on the spectrum of sexuality. It's okay. Why would you have a problem with it? Like, I mean, you've got to be really weird, haven't you? It's like having a go about flowers or something. Oh, fucking lilies, bastards. How dare they look pretty. Okay. Oh, then, maybe you've got hay fever. David says, gay pride is near. I propose Graham for gay personality of the year. I'm not gay enough, mate. Chris C, I'm not putting the blame on that one instance. However, since then, it's not uncommon to hear people refer to trans people as CS abusers, just like in the 80s when gay men were seen as CS. Yes. Yeah. There was always that thing in when I was growing up in the 1980s. People would equate being gay with being a child sex offender, because I guess this was a generational thing, and the older generation didn't see any difference between being gay and being a paedophile. They just thought, oh well, they're a deviant. I don't really know I don't know what pigeonhole to put them into. And one of the reasons why they've gone after trans people in such a visceral way is because of this. Once you know someone who is of a particular minority, and they're all right, it can change your view, your bigotry entirely. Your worldview can change overnight if you fall in love with someone from a different ethnic minority, someone from a different religion, someone from a different background. It can change your view overnight. If you've got friends from a particular different background, it can change your view overnight. And they know that it's very unlikely, because so many people are gay, so many people are lesbian, so many people are bisexual, that it's very unlikely for a family to exist without one member of that family being gay. It's very unlikely for a group of friends to exist without one member of that group of friends being gay or a lesbian or bisexual. And so it's very hard to be bigoted when your best friend or your sister or your brother or one of your kids is of that particular group. But with trans people, they're such a minority that this is why they're being targeted, because most people don't have a trans friend. They don't know anyone who's trans. Their only experience of trans people has been fed through this lens of the right-wing bigoted press, the tweets of J.K. Rowling to her 13 million followers, and also pornography. And that's not good. That's really bad. That's the only access that a lot of people have to trans people, and that's not the trans people's fault. It's just the fact that they are a minority of a minority. And this is why allies are so important, and why it's so important to speak out. If you're not trans yourself and you hear someone being transphobic, you need to speak out. You need to say, I'm sorry, but I think you're wrong. I think you've got the wrong end of the stick. I don't know why you're treating this group like this. Why should my friends who are trans be demonized in this way? Why should they have their rights taken from them? Why? We're going to talk a little bit now about the US export of transphobia, Trump's policies and the ripple effect. The Trump administration's rollback of LGBTQ plus protections, bans on healthcare, military service, school sports, because all 7 of those kids who, those trans kids doing the fencing. Got to stop them, eh? We've got they're now openly deporting people to El Salvadorian concentration camps, with queer and trans migrants amongst the most vulnerable. Universities are being threatened with funding cuts if they don't conform to anti-woke gender ideology bans. And then you've got the global backlash, UK following the UK cultural playbook, ban books, ban school censorship, and moral panic over gender identity. And it's so frustrating because it just doesn't matter. It's just like with the EU. Nobody cared about the EU in 2010. Nobody cared about the EU. It was way down on the list of voters' priorities. Number 1 was the NHS. It always is. Health. If you don't have your health, you don't have anything. Then it was education. then it was infrastructure. These things that that these things that they think are so important are it's maddening, because it didn't used to be important 10 years ago. Gender rights, trans people's use of public bathrooms, like, no one even thought about it. It was never an issue. I don't remember ever having a conversation in my life, in any of the places I visited in the world, where we talked about this thing. And I met transgender people while I was travelling. I met a wonderful transgender woman in Congo, who was a doctor in Congo. And these, like, I mean, that really sticks in my head. I made a transgender friend who I'm still friends with now, Jem. When I was on this boat over to when I was on the boat over to I was on my way from Malaysian Borneo to Mindanao in Mindanao in the Philippines, and it's that there was I was having this talk with these Sulu Island separatists who wanted to make their own country that was separate from the Philippines. And I remember they gave me this document that they were going to present to the UN, and I'm sort of flipping through this document about being recognised as an independent sultanate. And I was talking to them about it, and they were, they were quite sort of serious people, And then this woman comes over and says, "Hey, do you want to join us in the other room? We're having beers." And I open the door into, like, I don't know, the refectory or whatever, the cafe on board. And or the mess, is it? No, what's it called on board the ship? The galley, into the galley, and I'm just doing karaoke and drinking beer. It was great. I'm on the best nights of my life on this boat going over to Mindanao with Jem. We're still friends now, but yeah, I mean, this never came up. I did an interview with Jem, which I might actually put online. Actually, I don't think I've ever put it online. Talking about what it's like to be transgender in Malaysia and in the Philippines. Malaysia being quite a not a particularly strict Muslim country, but it's not as progressive as its neighbours, Thailand, places like that. And this never came up. Why would it pop into my head to say to her, like, what toilet do you use? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's none of my business, and it's just something I never really thought about. And then 10 years ago, they decided to do this. Decided to go nuts about, how dare women use the women's toilets. And what, are we gonna have to show a gender recognition certificate? Like, to say? I mean, it's just nuts, isn't it? Isn't it? I mean, I think it's nuts anyway. So religious and authoritarian actors, including those behind For Women Scotland, who brought this case to the Supreme Court, are coordinating globally. Don't forget the LGB Alliance, which drops the T off it, is a think tank. It's an anti-trans think tank. Where is it based? 55 Tufton Street. Yeah. The same place as the Taxpayers Alliance and the Institute of Economic Affairs and Civitas and all these other far-right fascist think tank groups that poison the minds of politicians in this country. And they work with the Heritage Foundation over in America, who famously published Project 2025, about 50% of which is now executive orders from Trump has come to fruition. One little bit of silver lining with what's happening with Trump and everything, that was pointed out by an American commentator. It's all executive orders. So once he's out of office, it's very, very easy for the next president to just get rid of all them. I mean, the economic implications of what Trump's done is going to echo through the decades. America's never going to be number one again. But when it comes to these actual sadistic rules that he has made up, they can be swept away very easily by the next president, because it's an executive order. It's not a law. It's not gone through Congress and all that. We've got also anti-trans sentiment is used to distract from economic collapse, corruption, and elite incompetence, which is massive at the moment. And Julian Marn says the trans community is on the cutting edge of fascism. It starts with trans people, but it never ends there. This is the canary in the coal mine for democracy, and I agree with him. And look, this is not up for debate. Trans rights are human rights. Trans women are women. Trans men are men. And this is not a debate. It's an orchestrated attack on a vulnerable minority. When they come for trans people, they're coming for all marginalized groups: women, immigrants, gay people, people of color, religious minorities. What can we do? We can stand up visibly against transphobia, challenge the lies when you hear them, whenever you hear them. Don't both sides this. There is no other side. It is basically the right thing to do, or being a horrible bigot. And support organisations that fight for trans rights, like Mermaids, Gendered Alliance, Stonewall, Transactual, the Good Law Projects, etc. And speak out when your politician and when you see the media selling hate as concern. It's not. It's hatred. When people talk about valid concerns about people coming across the channel on boats, it's not a valid concern. They just hate. They hate foreigners. They hate people from other countries. They don't want people from other countries coming here. It's pure xenophobia, pure racism. To all of my, my trans friends, you are valid. You are loved. You deserve respect and protection by the law. And some of us are fighting for that. We're doing what we can. Obviously, we don't have the power of 55 Tufton Street. But as Martin Luther King said, the arc of history bends towards justice. It just does. We progress, and we might take a few steps back now and again, but we progress. Better days do lie ahead. And one thing that has come out of this, law of unintended consequences, is I'm seeing a lot more people being vocal, cisgender people being vocal about trans rights, about standing up for our trans brothers and sisters and saying, no, this is wrong, this is bigotry, why are you being a bigot? We're the community of people who support trans people, who are allies towards trans people. I feel it's growing in voice. I mean, I might be wrong. I don't know if the stats show this, but I'm seeing it on social media more. I'm seeing it on Blue Sky. I'm seeing it on Facebook. I'm seeing it on Threads. People actually standing up for trans rights. And it's very interesting to see the response to Nick Frost announcing that he is going to be playing Hagrid in the new upcoming HBO Harry Potter series. The reaction to that was almost universally negative, from people saying, why are you allying yourself with a bigot? In so many words. So let's head over to the Supreme Court. We've got the bouncing balls of the live reporting from the BBC. And they are about to announce. I don't actually have my headphones set up, but I suppose we could hear this if I'm very clever. I don't know if this will work, but I'll give it a go. I'll give it a red hot go. Just 1 second, I'll turn my mic off. Okay, right. Okie dokie. So I'm just going to bring on the BBC sound. There's going to be no visuals here. This is just going to be the sound, because obviously I'm dropping frames like a crazy person. Okay, I need to sign in. Oh my god. It's all right. I'm sure someone's watching it on the other channel. I'm just gonna. That's taken too long. I'm just gonna go to YouTube and see if I can find the feed on YouTube. Nice one, man. So I have an idea. Everyone in the world post one rotten fruit to the White House. make it National Rotten Fruit Day. Yeah, but Trump's not going to see it, is he? God, the dollar's continuing to crash, isn't it? Bloody hell! Is it the Supreme Court? Or is it the High Court? Court trans ruling. Sorry about this. I should have had this set up in advance. What do I want to watch it on? AP. I'm going to watch it on AP. I was watching something the other day. I didn't even realise till too late that it was. Oh, okay. Right. Okay, so I'm not getting any audio out of here. Plug that into there. Okay. Just 1 second. I'm just making it so you can hear what's being said. Okay. God damn it. Okay, just give me 1 sec. Nope, still not working. He's just babbling at the moment. Don't worry. You know, I don't think you're missing much. While I click on my computer here and try and get things to work. Sound settings. Right, so I'm going to just plug in. Sorry, this is going to make a noise. Okay, there we go. Right. Output, speakers, device. Oh, okay, so it's not coming up as an option. That's a bit rubbish, isn't it? Yeti. Oh, there we go. Okay, cool. Brilliant. Right, we can hear now. Okay, this is coming from the UK Supreme Court on ruling on the legal definition of a woman.
To tell their story about what had happened to them and their child, and to be free to name and criticise the clinicians who had treated their child. The NHS trusts opposed the parents' applications.
My God,
primarily on
AP
the ground
has got actually
that
a live feed going on.
the clinicians' names would expose them to harassment and abuse. At first instance, the president of the family division held that the injunctions should be continued. The Court of Appeal disagreed and ordered that the injunction should be discharged, but stayed its order, in other words, suspended it, to allow time for an appeal to this court. The trusts now appeal to the Supreme Court, which continued the stay pending its decision of the appeal. The Supreme Court unanimously dismisses the appeal, but for reasons that differ from those given by the Court of Appeal.
So it sounds like
the court holds that the High Court can grant an injunction of this kind on the application of an NHS trust where that is necessary to protect the child's interests or to protect the administration of justice. However, it cannot continue the injunction on that basis after the child has died and the proceedings have come to an end. So if the injunction is to be continued, it must be on some other basis. The High Court also has jurisdiction to issue injunctions in order to prevent interferences with NHS trusts' performance of their functions. However, that basis of jurisdiction has not been relied on in these proceedings, and the evidence does not in any event demonstrate any continuing risk to the trust's performance of their functions. The High Court also has jurisdiction to protect the rights of the clinicians themselves, not to be subjected to harassment and abuse. But those rights should be asserted in proceedings brought by the clinicians. The clinicians' rights cannot be asserted on their behalf by NHS trusts, at least in circumstances where there is no reason why they should not be asserted by the clinicians themselves, as is the position after the child has died and the immediate emergency has passed. The court also observes that since the risk of harm to the clinicians is likely to decline after the proceedings have ended, a reasonable duration for an injunction will usually be until the end of the proceedings, and if they end with the child's death, for a subsequent cooling off period. In the event that a continuation of the injunction is sought beyond the cooling off period, the need for any continuing restriction of freedom of speech.
He's kind of babbling on a bit here, but from what I'm picking up is this whole trial was
the injunctions have remained in place
by
until
Four Women
now,
Scotland over Hollywood's Gender Representation on Public Boards Act of 2018, and that which aimed to improve gender balance.
Declined to do so, as we can see no proper legal basis for us to impose any further restriction on freedom of speech in these cases.
Judgment in the matter of Four Women Scotland against the Scottish ministers.
When we announce our decision in this case in a moment, some people here will be pleased and others will be disappointed.
Right.
Whatever your feelings may be, please respect the dignity of these proceedings by remaining silent until the court has adjourned. Lord Hodge will explain the decision of the court.
Okay, I might not have time to hang around.
The principal issues raised on this appeal are questions of statutory interpretation. The two United Kingdom statutes which we are interpreting are the Gender Recognition Act 2004 and the Equality Act 2010. The court is well aware of the strength of feeling on all sides which lies behind this appeal. On the one hand, women, who make up 1/2 of our population, have campaigned for over 150 years to have equality with men and to combat discrimination based on their sex. That work still continues. On the other hand, a vulnerable and often harassed minority, the trans community, struggle against discrimination and prejudice as they seek to live their lives with dignity.
Yes.
Lesbian women who have historically suffered marginalization because of their sexual orientation have entered the debate. It is not the task of this court to make policy on how the interests of these groups should be protected. Our role is to ascertain the meaning of the legislation which Parliament has enacted to that end. The central question on this appeal is the meaning of the terms woman and sex in the Equality Act 2010. Do those terms refer to biological women or biological sex? Or is a woman to be interpreted as extending to a trans woman with a gender recognition certificate?
Yes.
By that I mean a person born male who now possesses a gender recognition certificate amending her gender to female, and sex to be interpreted as including what I will refer to as certificated sex. The unanimous decision of this court is that the terms woman and sex in the Equality Act 2010 refer to a biological woman and biological sex. But we counsel against reading this judgment as a triumph of one or more groups in our society at the expense of another. It is not. As I shall explain later in this hand-down speech, the Equality Act 2010 gives transgender people protection not only against discrimination through the protected characteristic of gender reassignment, but also against direct discrimination, indirect discrimination, and harassment in substance in their acquired gender. This is the application of the principle of discrimination by association. Those statutory protections are available to transgender people whether or not they possess a gender
They've decided to reinterpret the Gender Recognition Act as
the
only covering biological, what they call biological women.
The Scottish Parliament has sought to increase the representation of women on the boards of public bodies by enacting the Public Boards Scotland Act 2018. I will refer to that Act as the 2018 Act. The current challenges relates to the statutory guidance which the Scottish Government issued in 2022, following a successful legal challenge to the statutory definition of a woman in the 2018 Act and to the original statutory guidance. In the revised guidance, the Scottish Government, relying on its interpretation of the Equality Act...
I'm really sorry, but... Okay, I'm going to have to leave it at that. If you do want to listen to the rest of what he's got to waffle on about, you can on another channel. But essentially, they've ruled that in the Gender Recognition Act of 2010, a woman is now defined as a biological woman, and it doesn't include, it specifically excludes trans women. So that's a big loss for today. We're going to talk about this more in a few hours when I'm sure if Rachel wants to do a show today, we'll talk about this later. And then we'll probably bring it up again in Geoscope, which we moved to tonight. I've really got to go because we've got to be out of here in 3 minutes. I've got to pack up all my stuff, clear out all my kit and get out the front door. Or we might have to pay a late leaving fee. So I'm going to have to get going now. But thanks so much for watching. Thanks for sticking with this channel. Thanks for the super chats. And take care of yourselves. And just know that there are people out there who care and want people who are transgender to be given the same rights and dignity and privileges as the rest of us enjoy every day. Just know that. Until next time, I'll say hello, good evening, welcome, and goodbye.